Before I bring today's guest on, I just want to give a massive thank you to my friends at Denodo, because after visiting over 25 different events in 2025, one of the phrases I keep hearing is no data, no AI, and agentic AI simply needs better data. Now, agentic AI is here, but it only works when the data behind it is complete, governed, and in real time. And this is one of the areas that Denodo helps, because Denodo gives you a logical data foundation that accelerates AI, boosts lakehouse performance, and turns your information into reusable data products, and for every team. So CIOs, architects, and business owners each get the data that they need instantly, and their global partners help you get up and running faster than ever. So if you want AI that doesn't hallucinate but actually delivers real business outcomes, visit denodo.com and start making your data work harder. But now, let's get today's guest on. Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, today's conversation is as much about community and endurance as it is about technology and what happens when business networking moves out from behind a screen or a meeting room and into the real world. Because my guest today, Sam Huntington, he's the creator of Hill Climbers. And that's a project that started as a podcast and grew into something much, much bigger. Because Hill Climbers brings together founders, investors, and operators throughout Austin and San Antonio, and bring them together through weekly group rides, live podcast events, and shared physical challenges. And Sam has built something that feels refreshingly human in the tech community, somewhere conversations start on a bike ride and often turn into incredible lasting professional relationships. And there are moments of serendipity there, where those relationships blossom into something much bigger. But we will talk about all this. And also, I want to learn more about why this model works. What does it take to build a community from scratch? And how endurance sports can shape the way people that show up in business and tech and startup communities. And his role at Wells Fargo is another area I want to explore, because when you think of Wells Fargo, you possibly don't automatically think of podcast events, bike rides, physical challenges, and startup communities. So we're going to bust a few myths and misconceptions as well today. But enough from me. Let me introduce you to Sam right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Sam Huntington. I'm a business development officer at Wells Fargo within their technology banking group. And my territory that I cover is here in Austin, Texas, and I also cover San Antonio.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you join me on the podcast today. And when I hear about technology and banking, I don't automatically think about cycling and podcasts and a whole other heap of things doing here. So when I was doing a bit of research on you, though, I quickly learned about your podcast, Hill Climbers, that blends tech entrepreneurship and endurance sports. So I've got to ask, what's the story here? What inspired you to create a podcast around that intersection? And how did storytelling become somewhat of a storytelling lens for you? There's got to be a story here, right?
Yeah, great question, Neil. But first, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show. I mean, I've interviewed a number of people at this point, and this is the first time I'm a guest on someone else's show. So this is a really big milestone for me. And also just kind of shout out to Wells Fargo, the team that provided the opportunity and introduced us. So yeah, very excited to be here and to be talking about Hill Climbers, because it really does kind of start and end with people. So the story behind the show is that I'm originally from Philadelphia. So I spent most of my life there, grew up there, and started riding bikes there in my late 20s. I ended up moving to LA, and I spent 5 years of my life in LA. And when I moved there, I really didn't know that many people. So I showed up with my bike. There's, a massive cycling community in LA, and I basically made my way around sort of making friends and building relationships through cycling. And very quickly, I just met a lot of really fascinating people, a lot of them entrepreneurs. And I am a business developer my entire career. So I had this kind of innate urge to meet people, befriend them, learn a little bit about them. And then at that point, and this was around 2018, I really wanted to share their stories. So I ended up filming actually interviews at very dramatic locations like the Hollywood Hills and like the Pacific Palisades. However, I concurrently met my wife at that time. So I had a day job. I had this kind of side project and I tabled it. Fast forward to 5 years ago, I met my wife in LA. We moved to Austin, Texas, and it was like deja vu. I was meeting a lot of really great people riding my bike. And the sort of window presented itself to launch hill climbers in a more meaningful way. So I started, first it was audio only, recording interviews, and then I quickly transitioned to video. And I did the podcast just strictly sort of, on the digital platforms for about a year and a half. But there was something missing. So I would ship the episodes and people would listen to them. The engagement was decent online, but I realized I was really craving the in-person connection. I wanted to build a community around cycling and business, which are the themes for the show. So I started literally group rides, a weekly group ride. And then soon after that, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we did live audience podcast tapings? So I'd invite a guest to a venue, invite audience attendees, obviously, but at the core, I really wanted people to network. So I've done 5 of these events over the last year. They've been very well attended, about 40 people showing up minimum. And then we did our summit on November 5th, which had 75 attendees. So it's been very exciting to bring the podcast into real life.
Absolutely love it. What a great story. I love what you're doing here. A question I've got to ask here, of course, is, are there enough hills in Austin for you? When I immediately think of Austin, I don't think of it as particularly hilly, shall we say. It's quite flat. But
so Neil, you'll have to come visit us because we are smack dab in the middle of Texas hill country. So thus, the name, I don't remember exactly when it hit me, but it was very clear that hill climbers was a very relevant name for the group. And so, yes, every Tuesday morning at 6:45, we go out and climb the Austin Hills.
Oh, love it. And of course, you've hosted founders who are literally and quite figuratively climbing hills in their lives and in their startup careers. So is there a guest story that surprised you or maybe even helped you shift your perspective on business or community? Because I think one of the reasons I do this every day is I love learning from different people from all around the world and those moments of serendipity and the magical things that can happen and the hard work and the stories behind them. But is there a particular story that stands out to you from the people you've spoken with?
Absolutely. And I think the perfect gentleman to highlight is my friend Doug Zell, who is a community builder himself. So Doug is a serial entrepreneur. Most notably, he co-founded Intelligentsia Coffee in Chicago, but he's also co-founded other brands like a cycling company, a bike company called Allied Cycle Works. And more recently, the Meteor Cafe, which is a hybrid concept between a restaurant, and they literally have a bike shop that is right next door. So I'm interviewing Doug, and basically he outlines why he thinks the Meteor is going to be successful. And the reason is it's a cafe. They have a kind of A-list wine program. So that's 2 separate disciplines. And then, like I said, they have a bike shop that is also part of the entire experience. And he said it's hard enough to do one of these things really well. when you can execute all three at a very high level, that's where you start to build a moat around the brand. That's where you start to have a really strong value proposition and kind of unique identifier. So, I've been sort of extrapolating this notion for hill climbers, in which we're doing the podcast, we're doing live audience events, and we're doing bike rides. So if we can execute on these things simultaneously at a high level, I think we'll be able to make a name for ourselves in the cycling like media landscape. I also want to highlight, when I interview Doug, a lot of times I'm asking founders to share some of the parallels that they see between cycling and entrepreneurship and the challenges of business. And Doug's like, you know what? My partner Chris is a Texas state champion in road racing, so very accomplished. And one day he asked Chris, he said, "Is there a time in the race when you want to quit? Like, you've been at a very high level in racing." And Chris says, "Absolutely. When the going gets tough, you're out of water, you're out of nutrition, and you just don't think you could go any further. That is the race. That is the challenge. That is when you really have to test yourself. So if you can just hang on the wheel for a little bit longer, maybe you can win the race. Maybe you can podium. You'll see what's on the other side." So I've really taken both of these things to heart in sort of building hill climbers, and thank you, Doug, for the wisdom.
What a great story. And I love highlighting on here the different startup communities outside of Silicon Valley. And it's for people listening all around the world. Austin is a real hotbed, isn't it, for startups at the moment? It feels a real thriving place, a tech community as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm, like I said, able to cover a really broad swath of the ecosystem. So seed stage companies all the way to up to $2 billion, a lot of them public companies. And it's been my pleasure to, and Wells Fargo has given me this opportunity to network in the way that's really natural for me. And part of that is through cycling. So it's really remarkable to be riding my bike and chatting with people and learn that they're founders or they're working for some of these really notable companies that are growing quickly in the ecosystem. So yes, absolutely, Austin's been a very exciting place to be as far as the community here.
And listening to you today, one of the things that I love and that stands out about what you're doing here is your passion for what you're doing, but also how you've taken a podcast and how it's evolved into real world events like group rides, live tapings, etc. And is there anything you've learned about building community offline within the tech ecosystem that you didn't expect when you started online? Because recording remotely on a Zoom invite is one thing, but getting out there and having those real world events and live tapings, it's different beast entirely. Anything you've learned along the way there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've seen the list of events that you've attended globally. So I know this is something that you're, I'm sure, very curious about and also have great insight into as far as like these international communities that you're visiting.
Yeah.
So the first insight is really giving people an opportunity to network around something, a shared passion that is outside of work. So when you get people together, they have kind of a commonality, connective tissue to talk about before they start kind of talking shop. And I think that can be transferred to other sports, to other interests. I think that's part of why the in real life experience has sort of taken off and is sticky. People are really excited to meet other cyclists, and then it's kind of a cherry on top when they can also talk about startup ecosystem and investing and what have you. So yeah, I mean, that I think has been the sort of insight for me, as you said, bringing the podcast from digital to real life. And I think the other kind of insight to borrow from Doug's wisdom is the stick-to-itiveness. I mean, We launched the group ride. There was a little spike initially, but then attendance petered off, and it was months and months and months of maybe a small handful of folks, one rider, two rider joining us. And that was pretty demoralizing. And we considered tabling the ride and maybe only doing it on the weekends, but we stuck with it. And more recently, a gentleman named Mark DeRoy, who coincidentally was simultaneously launching a cycling coaching business, showed up, and he started showing up every week. And he'd bring a couple friends. So eventually I said, "Hey, Mark, you're building your business. Would you be interested in partnering and sort of helping me organize and manage the rides?" And he enthusiastically said yes. And then, it's winter here in Austin, and in the last few weeks, it's been like 35 degrees, and we'll get 15 or 20 people coming out to ride with us. So, I think the kernel of wisdom there is in order to build the communities, you really do need a team. I mean, it's a group effort. It's really hard to shoulder the burden completely by yourself. And as far as the live audience podcast tapings go, we sort of laid the groundwork for a couple years with the online only podcast, then the group ride. And then I think there was kind of a steady drumbeat for about 2 years that led to basically like immediate demand for the events. I mean, we rolled them out, and I think the first one had 45 or 50 in attendance. So that part clicked immediately.
Yeah, so much of that resonates with me. And that's one of the reasons I go to many tech conferences around the world. I think getting first-hand conversations around diversity of thought, different perspectives, things that challenge your own thinking, your own belief systems and biases, that's where personal growth happens. Yet when we're in our own homes, our own social feeds, and everything from Amazon, Netflix to Spotify all seem to want to lock you into this, this is what you would like. We're going to give you more of the same. And I don't know. I feel like I want to escape that sometimes. I want to go beyond the algorithm. I want to listen to something I wouldn't usually listen to, watch something I wouldn't usually listen to, speak to someone I normally wouldn't get a chance to. That's where the magic really happens. That's where the exciting stuff happens, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one thing I haven't called out yet is the fitness.
Yeah.
You are having this shared experience. You're sweating, obviously getting a fantastic workout, and you're sharing that with other people. And trust me, I mean, our rides are competitive, and they're competitive for a reason, because I think that really binds people together. And there's such a thing as friendly competition. I personally think that's very addictive, and actually that's why I've designed the weekly ride this way. There's 2 short segments that are about 10 minutes apiece that are competitive, and the friendships being grown out of this small community are really strong. And by the way, we're also having success stories of cyclists that met on the ride pairing up and starting a company together. So needless to say, that all this stuff is very exciting to me, but it really starts with the workout and that shared experience.
Oh, wow, that's got to be a future podcast guest there. 2 people that met through a moment of serendipity on one of your rides, ended up creating a company. Man, that's the stuff that really interests me. And I'm curious, as a fellow podcaster, you must get bombarded with so many different requests, whether it be on LinkedIn or in your inbox, that want to come onto your show. How do you choose your guests? Is there a particular quality or story arc that you look for when deciding who to feature?
Yeah, I try to get guests, and this is a no-brainer, that are charismatic and that have great stories to tell.
Yeah.
And a lot of the founders of notable companies have that. So they've got that. They're good, quote, salespeople, but they also have very deep insights into their given business and discipline. And again, for me as the host, I get to ask the questions and then kind of sit back and soak up the wisdom. So that is one of my favorite parts about the job or hobby or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, it's folks that can speak in detail and really impart wisdom to my audience that I go for, and it helps when they're very entertaining. Right?
And you've also mentioned that the podcast does help you connect with tech founders in Austin. So are there any trends or themes that you're noticing amongst those conversations that you're having with entrepreneurs, especially those that you're riding with? Any themes coming out of those rides?
Yeah, and it's it's kind of a layup as far as the comparison between cycling and the challenges with entrepreneurship. So a lot of the themes that come up on the show are endurance and risk taking, and teamwork is a big one. Team building and aligning of incentives across a team. When early stage, especially, the going is really tough, and there are countless insurmountable challenges that you have to address. So those are very common, but it's so much fun because I get to interview a range of guests from CPG to deep tech to software, and yeah, there are a lot of consistent themes, but you're learning a lot about different industries as well.
And I'm curious, what role do you think endurance sports play in helping shape leadership styles or startup culture? Have you seen any direct correlations in some of the interviews you've had there? Anything else you've noticed?
Yeah, I think the folks that I'm interviewing relish a challenge, and they relish a challenge on a bike or starting a company. And I think that what they have in common is the reward of doing hard things. So after a hard ride, a hard workout, you feel good. I mean, the endorphins kick in, and I imagine it's similar for them starting a new company, growing it, and all of the challenges that lie ahead. So I don't think it's a big coincidence that a lot of the folks in the Austin community have some sort of endurance habit, and that's why I think the show itself has gained a little following, a little momentum, because in my estimation, I just think they're sort of very harmonious, the two things, entrepreneurship and cycling.
And if anyone from your listenership or community are listening and maybe looking for a few teasers on what they can expect, looking ahead, what's next for Hill Climbers? Any new formats, collaborations, or goals, or anything at all you're excited to pursue in 2026? Anything you can leave us with there?
Yes. So we have our second kind of marquee event coming up during South by Southwest. It's scheduled for Friday, March 13th. And we will be hosting a live audience panel. Our first confirmed guest is a gentleman named Nate Williams, who's a deep tech investor in the Bay Area. He's also on the USA Cycling Tech Council. So the panel is going to be themed around tech innovation in cycling, and we'll be rounding out the panel with a tech executive or founder, as well as an athlete, to talk about, again, tech innovation in cycling. So that is really exciting. We'll have a group ride that we'll do either before or after that. And it's South by Southwest, so should have a lot of people coming to town that can join us. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. Well, best of luck for the future there. Another thing that I love after doing a little research on you is how in your day job, you're developing long-term relationships within Great Austin and San Antonio's technology companies from seed to stage, and everything from apps, infrastructure and data, fintech, cybersecurity. Presumably, there's a real synergy between that and what you're doing outside of that, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing to be part of Wells Fargo, and like I said, they have given me this opportunity to be on your show and have been really supportive of this really kind of dynamic, unique approach I'm taking to business development. And yeah, I mean, I am meeting investors and founders literally on the bike when they show up to my group rides. So it's you can't think of a much better opportunity to build a relationship with someone, then that shared passion, spending sometimes hours with them at a time, sometimes suffering, like I said, there's some friendly competition. And then the follow-up is very natural. Can I buy you coffee? I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. And I really encourage people that are listening, that are either in business development roles or have that responsibility, to think about ways to connect with people over shared passions that are outside of work, because I really do think it builds strong relationships more quickly.
I think that's a beautiful moment to end on. But for anyone listening, maybe they want to learn more about the podcast. We've set off a few light bulb moments. Maybe it's the beginning of 2026. They live locally and they'd love to join you on a ride and improve their fitness and networking and so many other benefits from things like that. Where would you like to point everyone listening today?
Yeah, our website is hill-climbers.com. And then our Instagram is @thosehillclimbers. And we are slowly and steadily building our LinkedIn, so you can find us on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Neil. This has been a total blast. And like I said, I rarely get to talk about the story behind Hill Climbers. So this has been so much fun.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come on here and share your story today. So many big takeaways for me. I would ask everyone listening to go check out the links there. I'll add them to the show notes so they're nice and easy to find. And also let me know what you thought. Any big takeaways? Are you doing anything similar in your area? I'd love to shine a light on where you live too. But more than anything, Sam, thanks for sharing that story. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
There are so many things that I loved about this conversation with Sam today, because for me, it is a reminder that strong communities are built through consistency, shared experiences, and a willingness to connect beyond the keyboard and keep sticking with things when progress feels slow. And Hill Climbers actually shows what can happen when you combine storytelling, physical challenges, and real-world connections, and let relationships grow naturally from there. So if you're thinking about building a community, whether it be in your tech industry or startups, and whether it's through events, podcasts, or shared interests outside of the workplace, I think there's so much to learn from this model. And I'll add links to the show notes so you can check out Hill Climbers, listen to the podcast, follow them on Instagram, all that usual stuff. But most importantly, follow what Sam is building here. And if you're attending South by Southwest in March, make sure you check them out there too. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where have you seen the strongest business relationships from outside of the usual conference and meeting rooms and Zoom calls? I want to hear your examples of where you're making a difference here too. I love this unconventional thinking, breaking out of the box, busting the fourth wall. I want to hear your stories. So please, techtalksnetwork.com. And you can also DM me on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. But that is it for today. So thank you for listening as always. And I'll speak with you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.